The PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/UmiCapri, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of our patrons from the bottom of my heart from your support across all of our content. And let's start by thanking our Premium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Jonathan Brown over at youtube.com/PM Entertainment. Our Platinum producers, Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, and our Gold members, Argo, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benji Kong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dano, Skinny Matt, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, Fulia Fuji, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support. Now, on with the show. Hey everyone, it's me, Ryan Turford. I'm in my house, and you're listening to the most PlayStation-rific podcast on the internet. It's the PlayStation Drive. I'm on a Discord call with my friend Matt Sawinski, and on our journey today, oh my god, we finally might be able to put hard drives in our PlayStation 5s and unlock all of the space. So jump on into the PlayStation Drive. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
What is going on, Ryan? How you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm a little bit tired because it's been a busy week outside of Podcastville, but I'm doing okay. How about you, Matt?
I'm doing all right. Also tired. It's nothing compared to the schedule you've currently been working, but we've been getting ready for our 100th episode. We're almost there, and it's just been a lot of things all at the same time, which is just how life works sometimes.
I saw that you guys put out a couple teasers. One, you guys unveiled like a new logo, and then you announced kind of this 100th episode. You're doing this big celebration. So real quick, because this is part of cleaning the garage, Matt. Tell us about what's going on with Burnout Brighter.
Yeah, so over on Burnout Brighter, next week we're going to be launching our 100th episode. We have like a whole bunch of awesome guests coming on, like Mr. Midas and Matt from Assemble and Mop Garden. And essentially what we're doing a huge giveaway. Like PlayStation Canada sent us some copies of Returnal to give away. We have a bunch of Xbox games from Ubisoft as well, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Watch Dogs Legion, a whole bunch of indies. We have like 23 or 24 gifts that we're doing away. So if you're interested in joining the giveaway, everything's completely free. Hop over onto our YouTube at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter or my Twitter at twitter.com/burnout_Matt to join in, because yeah, who doesn't like free games, Ryan? There's so much.
Who doesn't like free stuff? I mean, free stuff is great, Matt. So plus, exactly. Come celebrate 100 episodes of your fantabulous podcast. So you can definitely do that. So congrats on reaching 100 episodes. I know it's a big milestone for any podcast to reach that. And here's to another like 300 more episodes, Matt. Hopefully.
There we go. And the Xbox Drive is at 200 too, right?
Yeah, we just launched our 200 episode this morning. Thursday, the day that we're recording this. So yeah, we officially hit 200, and who knows? We joked, oh yeah, this will be the last one. It's obviously not the last one. Who knows how long the Xbox Drive is going to go? I mean, it was kind of the spawn for this show as well. So many of our other shows, and it was kind of the show that kind of brought Sean and I together, because I used to do another podcast before this, before joining Yumi Capri and the Xbox Drive. And the Xbox Drive was a show that I listened to all the time as a fan, and then eventually when Luke kind of had to step away, I kind of subbed in, and that's how Sean and I even started doing content together, which led to this whole big thing of me becoming part of Yumi Capri and bringing about a whole bunch of other podcasts and stuff like that. So it was awesome to see it finally hit 200 episodes, and I couldn't be prouder of this community for all the kind wishes and thank yous and congratulations and everything else, all the messages from everyone for all their support. So I wanted to say thank you, of course, to everyone for supporting us. So anyways, let's get all the sappy stuff out of the way, because we also have to have more cleaning the garage to do, because it's dirty. We got, oil and stuff all over the place. We got to clean it up. So
everything everywhere.
First off, if you want to support the show, there's a number of ways you can do that. Number one, you can subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify. We're on all the things with the services. If you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it on the show. Also, you can subscribe to us right here on YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube. YouTube.com/Yumi Capri is where the show is live every single week. If you want to see our beautiful faces, unlike last week where the video kind of broke and we had to do an audio version of the show, but we fixed the problem, so that shouldn't happen again this week. And then last but not least, if you would like early access to this, as well as all of our other shows, Patreon.com/Yumi Capri is how you do that. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content, including a new episode of Yumi Capri, which Sean and I are recording a little bit later on this afternoon. That'll go up either tonight or tomorrow for patrons, as well as, again, this show early as well. So with all that out of the way, Matt, let's grab our 8 tracks, pop them in. It is time for the playlist. We played some games this week, Matt.
Yes,
I'm going to start with you. What'd you play this week?
More Final Fantasy XIV. I finally hit level 50, so I'm actually properly in Heavensward now. Gone to some new areas, met a bunch of new characters. It's interesting, Ryan, because now with so many new people in the game, like even doing the leveling roulettes has gotten interesting. Yeah. Like my friend and I were just trying to jump into one quickly, and we joined with a couple new players, and they went to like every single room in every single part of the entire dungeon. Which is totally fine. I mean, new players are there. They're going to watch their cutscenes. It's totally okay. But like they were also totally ignoring us because it was like, we're like, this is the way that we should go. And they're like, no, we're going to go this way. And then they were like, we have the key. They're like, we don't have the key. So it's kind of like, it was an interesting experience. But like, it's awesome that so many people are in this community now. I'm having a blast. I finally, fixed everything. I'm comfortable being back in that world after a little bit of a learning period coming back to everything, but it's a blast. I'm so happy to be back in it. You were also playing Final Fantasy XIV, right? How was your adventure?
Of course. So, I mean, I'm still kind of just going back and revisiting a lot of old raids and stuff like that, and getting a lot of rewards. Again, one thing I've never gone and done is done kind of the ultimate raids, which are essentially basically the most powerful bosses in the entire game. They have one for each level, so for each expansion. So they have one for the base game, and they're basically, it's like fighting like 4 different boss fights in one.
Jeez.
And some of them are just really like expertly choreographed, and they are very, very, very hard. But I wanted to do them because I've never had a chance to do them before, and it seemed like the perfect time to do that. But especially as I kind of noted at the beginning, and we've talked about it before on the Yumi Capri podcast as well as other shows. My time, unfortunately, over the next 2 weeks is very limited as far as playing games, where I basically have like an hour or less a day to kind of devote to games. Or on days like today, I'm doing 2 podcasts and then going straight to work. So, I mean, I don't really have any time to play games today. So whenever I have a little time like that, like for an hour or so, I'm more likely to jump into something like Final Fantasy XIV, where I can, do something for an hour and then kind of bounce, whether it's a level roulette or something else. I feel like I have some level of accomplishment there, and then kind of go about my day rather than starting something new, which leads me back to you, Matt, because I see you played Cris Tales this week, whereas I've just haven't had a chance to go back to it because it's the type of game where like I want to devote a couple hours to play it. And not played in like very small chunks, but I just haven't really had a chance to go back to it. But tell me about Cris Tales, Matt. And
I've gotten a couple hours deeper. Again, like things have been quite busy, so like I haven't had too much time. But I did spend a few more hours with it. I still a little conflicted on the game thus far, just because like there's so much that it does well. It's beautiful. The voice acting is fantastic. There's a lot and the combat is fun. Most of the time, the movement speed is still something that's bothering me. Like Cris seems to move quite slowly. Like she looks like she's running fast, but the level's kind of moving slowly. And it's this kind of discrepancy, especially with random battles, which like, we've been playing JRPGs for how long now? Random battles aren't anything new, but there's just this weird part of it in my brain that's like, I'm moving slowly, which makes me feel like I'm getting into more battles. And random battles are just something that's, especially in a system where each battle is quite long. Like you can spend a minute, like, 2 minutes around on just a simple battle, because like there's certain ways that the battles kind of flow to kind of eliminate things quickly, but it still takes time. So like that's a little frustrating for me, along with something that I ran into for the first time today that really frustrated me. You can actually get locked out of side quests and they can expire without any warning. Like the game tells, I got to a certain point and the game says, if you do this, then your side quests are going to expire. But one of the characters that I took a side quest from was in the next area that I couldn't get to. So like and then like I literally had done 95% of the side quest. The only thing left that I had to do was literally deliver the items, and I couldn't do it. And then I had to go into that place to continue the story. And then afterwards, I went to the character who gave me the side quest, and I couldn't complete it. It was expired. It was done. And the game gives you no prior warning that these side quests are like time sensitive, where, you know, once you reach a certain point in the story, they can't continue, which obviously I would have finished it sooner. There's just things like that like kind of break it a little bit in my brain. Because there's so much going for it. So I'm going to stick with it because I am really curious to see where the story goes. And I am curious to see if, like, maybe as the characters develop and the abilities develop, you know, it'll kind of ease some of this, you know, early game frustration. But I'm more divided on it than I was expecting to be. So I'm going to keep going, especially because we are reviewing it as well. But right now I am kind of lukewarm on it. And I thought I'd be much higher on it at this point.
That sounds really disappointing. Like the whole point of side quests is that you kind of, you know, do them at your leisure rather than, you know, trying to rush through them. Like I don't really love the sound of that either. That's that definitely doesn't sound like it's for me. But I think it's good that we talked about it here, because I feel like there's going to be some people, you know, jumping into it maybe for the first time soon, because obviously there's a lot of games out right now, so maybe not everyone's jumping into it right away. And it's good for people to know that that's a thing now, and kind of to learn from your mistake, I guess, Matt. Then that way, you know, they don't make the same mistake.
And like, I wouldn't mind it as...
I just wish it didn't have to happen to you too.
Exactly.
So.
And like, I wouldn't mind it as much unless I missed it, which is obviously a possibility. I wouldn't have minded much if the game tells you these are side quests, they're time sensitive, make sure you complete them. You know what I mean? Like, if the game's upfront about it, I have no problem with that. It just sucks learning about it in a way that locks you out after. But yeah, like I said, I don't mean to sound so negative about the game, because it does do a lot of things very well. And again, maybe this is just kind of early game, you know, frustration / like figuring things out. But I mean, we'll see. But I did see that you did play something a little bit new, Ryan, or at least went back to something that we spoke about last week. How's that?
Our little talk about Genshin Impact made me want to, you know, go back and try it again. And again, I didn't have a lot of time to pour into it. And just like what I said about Final Fantasy XIV, like Genshin Impact seems like the type of game where, you know, if I've got very limited time, like I feel like I can put in a little bit of time and then kind of put it down and, you know, feel like I got something done. So I went in, I did a couple temples, I unlocked some new characters, and overall just had fun kind of reintegrating back into the Genshin Impact world. Again, I wasn't super far into the game to begin with, but at the same time, I wanted to go back and at least, you know, try it again. And I had a lot more fun revisiting the game this time around because, first of all, this was the first time I'd been checking out the PlayStation 5 version of the game.
Right.
Because before then, I'd only played it on PS4, so I'd never actually tried this game on PlayStation 5. So I wanted to try it there and see what all the fuss is about. And it definitely runs like way better than it did on PlayStation 4, which was kind of the main thing that kind of pushed me away from Genshin Impact when I first played it, because it felt like it had a really solid action RPG gameplay system, but it really would have served better to have like 60 frames per second for the game. And now that we're on PlayStation 5, it actually hits that.
Nice.
The world itself looks beautiful. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed my time going back into it. Again, I don't have a ton to say about it because I didn't spend a lot of time in that, especially because I also played Flight Simulator this week on the Xbox side.
Nice.
And that took up some of my time too. So I wanted to mention it here, especially because I know Kyle Turford, my brother, wrote in on the previous episode, and I'm going to kind of read his comment here because I know I mentioned on Kyle on the last show because Kyle actually plays a ton of Genshin Impact.
Right.
So he's kind of like my go-to expert on the game. And he actually said on the previous episode, to kind of clarify something we talked about with the Aloy story, is that, hey, just to make some stuff clear with Aloy in Genshin, she's coming in 2.2, which is in mid-October for all PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 linked accounts, and 2.3 in late November for all other accounts. So she is coming to the PC platform, as well as, I can't remember if the Switch version is going to be out by then. But if it is, then she'll be on the Switch version of the game. Personally, I would have been more excited for a Ratchet and Clank Genshin Impact crossover, but that's just me. So first of all, Kyle, thank you so much for basically leaving a comment and kind of clarifying things. I'm such a Genshin Impact noob, but I'm glad we know at least more about that. And that puts a little more clarification into what we talked about last week with Aloy coming to the game. I'm still really excited to unlock her. I think that is the time where maybe I'll sink more time into this game.
Yep. And that also gives us a bit of time to get used to the game and jump back in. Gives us a few months to figure things back out. That's awesome. Yeah. I also kind of wonder now. This also gets my rumor mind turning if that means that Horizon is going to come this fall, which is why she's coming to the game this fall. Maybe we'll see. Who knows?
My thought process is that they probably already had this deal in play like a year ago. And they and they just timed it for when they thought Horizon was going to come out a year ago. But I think, I don't think this points to it coming out this year. But hey, you never know. Again, I really want Horizon to come out this year, but obviously I don't think this really tells us anything about that. But enough about that. Let's slam the brakes on this conversation. It is time for some breaking news. So with August right around the corner, of course, we got a new batch of PlayStation Plus games announced, one of which we already knew about. That is Hunter's Arena Legends, which is our PlayStation 5 game for the month, as well as Plants vs. Zombies, Battle for Neighborville, and Tennis World Tour 2. All these games will be out on August 3rd. Of course, for those that don't remember, we talked about this from our State of Play conversation. Hunter's Arena Legends is this like weird battle royale fantasy game that is coming out basically day and date for PlayStation Plus. I know you and I were both kind of lukewarm on it, but again, it's free. So, I mean, I'll at least probably try it at some point. Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville is a game that I played when it came out on Xbox because I was part of like this earlier tester period for the game. And I thought it was actually a lot of fun. It's a fun, like, third-person shooter. It's very goofy because, again, it's Plants vs. Zombies. But it actually was surprisingly fun, and I've heard nothing but bad things about Tennis World Tour. But I'll still try it out because it's tennis. But what do you think about this selection of games, Matt?
This is probably the weakest month we've had in a little while, in my opinion. Hunter's Arena Legends, they had to go on and clarify that this is actually coming to PS4 and PS5 through PlayStation Plus because earlier they said it was PS5, and now it's coming to both. I'm still really lukewarm on that game. Like I said, I'll jump in and try it. The other two, Plants vs. Zombies and Tennis World Tour, do absolutely nothing for me personally. I think I tried one of the other Plants vs. Zombies kind of shooters because there was another one that came to PS4 Plus, I believe, a while ago. And it didn't click much for me. And Tennis World Tour, I literally have never heard of until this was announced for PlayStation Plus. So those two don't really do much for me. Plants vs. Zombies, I have heard decent things about, so I may check it out. But yeah, I think overall this is kind of a weaker month than we've gotten in the last few.
Yeah.
Which I mean is fine. Not every month is going to be a winner, but there's still a new game. There's still some cool stuff. So I mean, we'll see. I'm fine. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I was actually very surprised when Microsoft announced Games for Gold this month because I was like, man, Games with Gold, I think for the first time this year, might actually be better than PlayStation Plus, which, like, again, never happens. But again, like, going back to Plants vs. Zombies, I think that game is more for kids. So if you have kids or if you've got a family, I think they're going to really like that game if you've never played it. So, and I know we have a lot of parents that listen to the show. So that's why I wanted to point that one out. But otherwise, for us adults, it's admittedly a little bit harder to get into a game like that. Because again, it is more geared towards, younger ages. Like anyone, like, especially if you want like a shooter for anyone 15 or under that isn't really like super violent, because you're not shooting other people. You're shooting like corn or like angry tomatoes and stuff like that. Like it's very silly, and I think it's definitely a good market for that. But yeah, like Hunter's Arena Legends, same with you. I'm just like, I couldn't care less about that game, but at least we'll try it and maybe it's fun. I mean, they seem to be pushing this game really hard, so maybe it's better than we're thinking. Who knows? But
hopefully.
Next up, we got some financials because, of course, this was financial week over on all the podcasts because Nintendo talked about theirs and Xbox talked about theirs. And we got all the Sony financials, including PlayStation 5 hitting 10 million consoles, which is a pretty huge milestone. This is up from the 7.8 million, which was reported just back in April. So
wow,
yeah, they've sold a little over 2 million in a few months, which is kind of crazy, and it's well outpacing pretty much every other PlayStation console, including PlayStation 2, which again just shocks and astounds me to this day. And they're basically selling every single one they produce. So I mean, we are kind of seeing just how many of these things they've produced because they're literally the second they go on sale, they're basically sold out. So what do you think about Sony hitting 10 million consoles sold, Matt?
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, it's fantastic news. I saw somebody tweet that I can't remember who it was now, but somebody said like, they literally cannot make them fast enough, which is true. I would have loved to see a world where they, stock restrictions weren't an issue, because I think it would have been much higher. Mm-hmm. But obviously, given the situation that we're in, 10 million is fantastic. And I mean, Xbox, Nintendo, and PlayStation are all selling like crazy right now. So, the console space is doing very, very well. I'm curious. I so want to see how the PS5 will continue to sell over its lifespan, whether it's going to go higher than the PS4, which, did astronomical numbers as well. It's awesome. And especially on a year where, they've been pretty consistent with the first party stuff. We've gotten some great games over the course of the last 8 months, right? Since the PS5 came out. It's great numbers, and I'm stoked to see what the numbers will look like as this becomes more readily available, because I'm sure it will only shoot up higher. Yeah, and this is something that Sean and I talked about in the Xbox Drive yesterday, because Xbox also released their numbers, or I should say numbers in quotation, because they never actually talk about the number of consoles they sell, but they did mention that it's also the fastest selling Xbox console in Xbox history. So with that and PlayStation 5 both booming, it just tells us two things. Number one, gaming is bigger than it's ever been at this point, because there's just so much demand for them that literally both consoles, even on the Xbox side, like you can't find those in stores either. Like they're selling, like Microsoft is also selling as many consoles as they're producing, and the same as Sony is. They just haven't been able to make as many of those consoles as Sony's been able to make. So it's real. I'm with you. I would love to see a world maybe where, if COVID didn't happen, what would have happened with the sales of these consoles? Would be seeing them sell something similar? Would be seeing like astronomical numbers, like in the 20 million range for PlayStation 5? Like, I can't even imagine, what that would have been like looking at it, especially too, because especially because we've never seen this from consoles at all, period. Like even outside the COVID era, like when you look back on PlayStation 2 or Xbox 360, or even like Xbox One, which sold surprisingly well when it first came out, or the PlayStation 4, like we thought those were really good launches, and they were a little bit hard to find, especially PlayStation 4 when it first came out. But yeah, like I can't even imagine what the numbers would have been for PlayStation 5 if it wasn't hindered by supply at this point. So yeah. And I hope this just kind of puts to bed the whole, console is dead thing, which has been going on for years and years. It seems like every time there's a new generation afoot, everybody's like, consoles are dying with this one. I don't think consoles are going anywhere anytime soon. And I mean, if these sales are any indication, they're going to continue to sell well. So
I mean, the fact that Valve is putting out a console basically tells you everything you need to know about where the console space is at. So there you go. But in addition to that, we got some new Sony news this morning about the PlayStation 5 software beta. So we talked about this as a news story about a month ago, where they introduced signups for the PlayStation 5 software beta, where essentially if you sign up, you get early access to like a beta version of the OS to try out some new features. And we got kind of the first slate of new updates for this beta, which will eventually be rolled into the main system software, including, finally, Matt, PlayStation 5 expandable hard drive space is officially going to be a thing. There's a list of hard drives as well that they actually posted along with this. I actually linked it in the show notes, because we're not going to go through every single one of them, because there's a lot of hard drives that are approved for this. But basically, if you put one of the hard drives from the approved list in your PlayStation 5, it'll work, as long as you have this software beta. In addition to that, before we talk about the hard drive stuff, they also emphasized some other changes with the software, such as if you're playing PlayStation Now games, you can actually set the resolution between 720p and 1080p. If you've got like a weaker internet connection, for example, you can kind of lower the resolution to kind of help pad the bandwidth a little bit and decrease latency. There's also updates to kind of the Friends tab, as well as the control center interface to add a bunch of new personalization options for your controllers. Like, because we had some of the default options, like default invert controls and stuff like that. They're adding more to that menu this time around, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff that they haven't really talked about yet. They said there's going to be other changes that come along with this. So, Matt, what do you think about this news?
So before we kind of circle back to the hard drive thing, because I think that's going to be our biggest point from this, I'm stoked that the control center is changing a bit. I'm excited to kind of rearrange the icons because they said that's going to be completely customizable now as to what you want in what spot, which is fantastic because I'm sick of going all the way to the right to power down the console.
Yep.
So, I'm excited to move some of those things around. I'm stoked that they're making some changes to the friends as well and just making it a little bit more easily managed along with the whole PS4 versus PS5 game. Now you're actually going to have the PS4 version and the PS5 version of the game live in separate fields on your crossbar, which I think is great because I think there's a lot of confusion about which one you're playing, especially if you're not paying attention. So I think that they're doing a lot there that's really great, and I'm surprised they're going this far with the first major update. Mm-hmm. The hard drive stuff, I was excited for, and as I read more, I got less excited because they also went on to say that you should probably have cooling requirements if you're going to be using a new, M.2 SSD in the PS5, and those things are expensive. Yep. I mean, like the hard drives themselves are expensive, and then on top of that, they're asking you to also have a cooling system for that's going to be almost the price of a new PS5 if you want some decent storage. To me, I don't know. I was really planning on getting this, and now I think it's going to be one of those situations where I'll wait a while and see how this kind of shakes out. And, as people kind of test it more and figure out what's the best way to do it. Because, I was really stoked. And then when I started reading about the additional cooling requirements, I was kind of like, Xbox seems to have figured this out in a way that makes sense. And now PS5, the whole thing has always been, look how fast it is, which is fantastic. But now we might be seeing a bit of a con to that side of it. Where are you at on this, Ryan?
Yeah, actually, I chuckled when I saw the news story about this, the post about this, where it's like, so when you put your hard drive in, you should probably, install a heatsink in the drive compartment so that, you're able to let off heat from the hard drive. I'm like, what? What? Why? Yep. It's just, it's so strange because I know people were very excited and were kind of touting this as kind of a high point, the ability to install whatever hard drive you want and not having to go with a proprietary measure like Xbox does. But now looking back on it with the information we now know, it's like maybe Microsoft had it right all along to do the memory cards and just go that route. And even though they're partnered with Seagate and you only have one option, eventually that there are probably going to be third party options for that storage space. And to your point as well, these hard drives aren't cheap. The Seagate one, for example, that I saw got approved. The cheapest one is 500 gigabytes, which is what's already in your PlayStation 5. Where it's a little bit more, but that's a moot point. But that hard drive is $150 for buying a heatsink for it or some kind of cooling solution for it, which is, as to your point, by the time you factor in all the costs, it's going to be as much as a new console at that point. It's just, it just hurts my brain. Why couldn't they have found, maybe the drive compartment then should have been in a different spot. I know they wanted it to be in a very easy to get to area, but it does. But the PS5 is so great with cooling as it is because of the way it's designed. I wish maybe they would have been able to put it in a different spot that even if it was a little bit harder to get to, at least it would have been able to sufficiently cool the hard drive without you having to install a whole bunch of other stuff in there. And especially too, because most people don't even know how to install stuff like that, how to put in heat sinks or complex cooling solutions. Because you also have to remember you're going to have to find something that's small enough to fit in that drive bay compartment too, without also making it take up the entire space either, because then that'll have its own heat problem on top of that.
And it's at that point, do you have to leave a plate off? Is there going to be something external that you're going to be running to your PS5? To your point, I have no idea how to do any of this. Yeah. Right? As my thought process is hard drive, plug it in, it works. Adding in a cooling system and everything else just confuses me endlessly. And I really am curious because, seeing on the PS5 subreddit and some of the other PS5 groups that I'm in, other people are already using storage solutions on the PS5. I really wonder if, how significant the speed drops using something else, using something that's perhaps a hard drive that is not as fast. I wonder how much of an impact it is, because then people can opt to use one of the ones that's perhaps not approved but is slower. but you don't have to worry about all these extra steps. Like I'm curious as to how that factors in as well, because maybe you're right. I think maybe Xbox figured it out, which is why, it's more expensive up front as a piece of hardware, sure, but then it's also much simpler. I don't know, Ryan. I'm really curious to see how this is going to kind of shake out as this kind of goes into full, out of beta and see how people kind of adapt to it, because this to me, really, makes me less excited for this option.
Well, the crazy thing is that when you look at it, it's not really more expensive upfront for the Microsoft solution either, because the Seagate card is $200 American, right? Well, the Seagate, the hard drive I talked about for the PlayStation 5 for the 1 terabyte option, which would be equal to what you're getting for the memory stick, because that memory stick is 1 terabyte for Xbox. To buy the same hard drive with the same size, it is $250. So it's actually more expensive for just the hard drive. So
there you go.
It's just like, yeah, it's not good. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm with you. What you talked about earlier, I'm in wait and see mode at this point. I'm gonna let other people experiment with this stuff and figure out kind of what the best solution is, and then we'll go from there. At this point, I'm comfortable, using like a 3.0 hard drive to basically shuttle all my games off to that I want to leave installed, and then I'll just move them over when I want to play them again. At that point, I feel like that solution's worked for me both on Xbox and PlayStation, and I'm going to kind of continue to do it here at this point, because yeah, I don't know if it's going to be worth the investment that we're probably going to have to put into this to add to the hard drive. And to your point, like, this hard drive might not actually be like nearly as fast as the one that's already in the console, because the one that's in the console is like one of the fastest hard drives on the market right now in general. So at that point, you're not really getting, like, you're also going to be sitting through more load times too. So yeah, we'll wait and see on this one. Hopefully they come up with a better solution in the future. Well, next up, a game that we were looking forward to coming out next month has actually been delayed. Kenna Bridge of Spirits has been delayed until September 21st. It's basically been delayed a month because it was supposed to come out at kind of the end of August. And I'm going to bring in Jedi Master Ren, who actually asked us a question about Kenna. So Jedi Master Ren on Discord asks, what are y'all's thoughts on the delay for Kenna? Do you think it allows the game to breathe a little more with other releases around that time, or push it into a more hectic release schedule? Matt, what do you think about Jedi Master Ren's question, but also about the Kenna delay?
Well, first off, the Kenna delay. Again, we've talked a lot about delays over the last few weeks. I'll play the game when it's ready. I don't really have an issue waiting. I think it's fine if they need more time. I'd rather play a better version of the game than rushing something out and then dealing with it. Though I do agree with Jedi Master Ren that I think this pushes it into a much busier season. I pulled up a release calendar here. I mean, we're going to have Life is Strange: True Colors on September 10th, Tales of Arise on September 10th, Deathloop on September 14th, NBA 2K22 on September 22nd, Diablo 2 Resurrected on September 23rd, Death Stranding Director's Cut September 24th, Lost Judgment September, like Ghost Runner. There's Ghost Runner is actually delayed. But not thinking of Ghostwire.
But that week, Matt, is just got so many releases, including Kenna now. So yeah, I think it's going to be harder for it to stand out that week. Whereas if it released at the end of August, because don't get me wrong, there's actually a lot of great releases looking at the calendar for August. But I think that would have been a better window for it. But at the same time, to your point, I'd rather play it when it's finished and when it's properly working, rather than playing some kind of buggy mess or something that's not polished, or something that the developers aren't happy with. Like, I'm glad that they're taking the time that they need to do this, but I definitely think it does push it into a more hectic window. Like, if there was a lot of polish, maybe what they should have maybe considered instead is maybe even pushing it back even farther. Like, maybe pushing it back to like December, for example, where we just don't have a lot of releases. And we've seen that December releases actually work, whether it's on the Nintendo side or Microsoft side or Sony side. Like, I think that maybe that would have been a good window for this game. I don't know, but that week in particular it's gonna be a rough one, Matt. Especially because we'll still playing Tales and the other September games, but then also, like you said, like Lost Judgment's out that week. A bunch of other games are coming out the same week as it. So it's going to be a little bit harder, I think, to find its audience. But it's also, I think it's going to be a big showcase for the PlayStation 5's power as well. And maybe that'll bring more eyes to it than than I'm maybe giving it credit for, especially with what we're seeing with Ratchet as far as sales are going for that game. Because like many Ratchet games don't sell nearly as well as this new one is selling, solely on the fact that it's basically showcasing the PlayStation 5. So maybe if we apply the same logic to Kenna, maybe it'll sell well, but we'll see.
I think there's a lot of hype around this game as well, and I think the reviews are really going to make or break it in that space. I think that like the internet, especially Twitter, has a lot of hype for Kena. So like if the reviews come out and it's fantastic, I think it'll do just fine. But I think the reviews start to get middling. I think people might go on a wait for sale, which I think in August, I think more people would have been willing to jump in regardless of reviews. But I think pushing it to September, I think you're right. I think pushing it even farther back may have been a better decision. But I guess we'll see when September starts to roll around.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next up, we had EA Play Live happen basically an hour after we recorded last week's show, so we didn't get a chance to talk about any of the stories. But to be honest, there weren't many stories really for us to talk about except for this one. So EA Motive have announced a remake of Dead Space. It is coming to PlayStation 5 sometime in the future. We don't know when this is coming out. All we saw was a very brief trailer of just the Ishimura, as well as Isaac basically getting suited up, and that was it. That was all we really saw. Who the heck knows when this is coming out? Matt, what are your thoughts on this? Because I have some thoughts about it, even though I talked about it a lot on the Xbox Drive yesterday, but go ahead.
So I am actually really curious to hear what you think, Ryan, because I've never played Dead Space. I missed out on that trilogy entirely. I know that this is a very, very beloved game, and a lot of people really, really wanted it to come back. I did see, stories talking about how it is going to be trying to restore some cut content from the original to kind of, flesh out the experience as to what it was maybe originally intended to be. But yeah, horror games are generally a little bit of a harder sell for me. But like this is one that I've heard about for so long that I am, especially with it being coming to PS5, am much more likely to give a whirl for the first time. But tell me, why is this so exciting, Ryan? I don't get it.
So first off, I should preface that because on the Xbox Drive we did our list of the 50 best Xbox 360 games, and Dead Space was my number 2 game. I am a big fan of Dead Space. I like that game a lot. But part of that list and part of the high ranking was the list we did for the Xbox Drive. We had most of the points for where the items would rank be with how well does the game play today if you were to play it for the first time today. So this game came out in 2011, so about 10 years ago from when we're talking about it. And it plays really, really, really well if you go back and play it today, especially if you play it on like back compat on Xbox Series X or Xbox One, or if you play it on PC on ultra settings, it looks like a brand new game. So my thoughts are mixed on this because I love the original Dead Space as a huge horror fan. Horror sci-fi in particular is probably like my favorite like subgenre of anything, whether it's movies or games. Like I love like horror and sci-fi coming together and doing this awesome mashup. So when I saw the announcement of Dead Space, I actually had mixed feelings about it. I was not super excited about it, mainly because, number one, the first game is still very playable today, and it's only been 10 years since it came out. I generally, when it comes to full remakes, I'm much more excited about them when the previous game like has some flaws or some issues with the way it plays, or if it doesn't stand up the test of time. Like Final Fantasy VII, for example, I think is a great example of a game that really deserved to be remade, because even though I think the combat really holds up well in that game, the visuals don't hold up nearly as well, and as well as some of the battles and stuff are a little bit weird, and there's some jank to that game which kind of warrants a full remake. Resident Evil 2 being another example of a game that really could have used a remake, because tank controls, no one wants to play with tank controls now. Like it's such an old outdated design philosophy. So bringing Resident Evil 2 out as a remake made perfect sense. With this game, though, this game already plays super well if you go back and play the original version. And I almost would have rather them do like a remastered trilogy for PlayStation, because it's already on Xbox, but we can't play these games now on PlayStation, rather than them doing like a remake of it, because this is the type of game that I don't think really needs a remake. Not only that, but this game is being done by EA Motive, and EA Motive's track record has been mixed. I mean, they've had some good games and they've had some bad games. They've been mostly working on EA Star Wars games. Like they did the campaign for Star Wars Battlefront 2, which I know a lot of people didn't like. And then they also did Star Wars Squadrons, which is a game I really liked. So they're kind of hit or miss. Plus, this is being done in the Frostbite engine, which I'm sure will still look really cool on PlayStation 5. But we've heard many stories from other developers about, things about the Frostbite engine that I don't necessarily love. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what the game actually plays like, and maybe that'll get me more excited as a Dead Space fan. But if you were to ask me as a Dead Space fan, what I would have loved to see more maybe than this would either be just a re-release trilogy on PlayStation, or a brand new Dead Space game with new characters and kind of expand the universe more rather than doing another story like a remake of the first game, I think. So sorry, go ahead.
Does the promise of cut content do much for you? Like with them seemingly adding in some stuff that didn't make it into the original game? Like, does that get you a little bit more excited, or could that have been DLC in a remastered collection, or where's your head at on that?
I would say it does a little bit, but whenever we've seen kind of cut content come back to game re-releases or remakes, sometimes it goes over really well, and then sometimes it feels like when you play through that content, it feels like it was cut on purpose, for a reason. So that's why, I don't think whenever I hear that about any game, whether it's Dead Space or something else, that doesn't really get me too excited, because it can go both ways. I like the idea that they're expanding it a little bit, but I also, as someone who played the game recently, again to do our Xbox list, it was already a game that felt condensed. It felt like it was the perfect length, because horror games, you never want them to go on for too long, or else the world just doesn't feel scary. It removes a lot of the tension from the game, and it just feels like horror games feel a little bit samey when they go on a little bit too long. And Dead Space was it took you about 7 to 8 hours to finish it, and that felt like the perfect length for a game like this. So adding too much to it, I fear, might make the experience be a little bit bloated. But again, I don't want to judge the game too far ahead of it coming out, because again, we haven't really learned too much about it. But again, I just want to say my opinions are mixed. But hopefully, when they show the gameplay, I get more excited about it. But we will see, because who the heck knows when this is coming out? This reminds me of them announcing Mass Effect 4 or Dragon Age, Dragon Age 4. They just announced them with no dates. So this could be a 2023, 2024 game at this point. But last thing before we go, Matt, we got to talk about Blue Box Studios again.
Oh my
our
God,
favorite developers on the PlayStation side, because they have an interactive teaser coming out sometime soon, as well as this weird app. But they released some teaser images this week, Matt, that set the internet on fire. So what happened with Blue Box? Tell me about it.
So Blue Box, as anybody who's been paying attention, or perhaps if you haven't, is a indie developer that has a lot of conspiracy theories going around, linking it to Kojima and Konami, and there's a lot of really wild theories out there. So go take a look into that. But this week they announced that they're going to be having a teaser app coming out, which isn't the norm on the PlayStation side whatsoever, but it's apparently coming on August 10th. They were very specific talking about Japan. The image that they put out about the teaser has a face in the background with an eye patch. Very clearly, a lot of people are saying, oh my God, it's Metal Gear. There was a tweet going on about an interview that the founder was going to be doing in a foreign country, talking about, about the interview. But then when they listed the sponsors, they listed Konami. About 10 to 15 minutes later, deleted it, changed it to Bloober Team, which has a partnership with Konami. So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of, now a lot of people are back on this is Konami, this is possibly Kojima, and especially because now there's a lot of rumors saying what, it was never Silent Hill, which was the huge rumor before. It's actually Metal Gear. No, it's not Metal Gear. It actually is Silent Hill. And then there's obviously a huge part of it it's just an indie developer that may have gotten in over their heads. So it is coming after it was delayed. It is coming in August. As to what this game really is, Ryan, or who is actually in control here, I have no freaking idea anymore. I have no idea what to think. Where are you at on Blue Box and Abandoned? Is this Konami? Is this Kojima? Is this Metal Gear? Is it just an indie studio? Where are you at on this?
So fun fact that you didn't mention about the teaser image as well is that in the blurred background, there's also text kind of like what they did with the Phantom Pain, where they had like when they announced the Phantom Pain and they had like kind of the slanted letters that eventually revealed to be Metal Gear Solid 5 in the text there. They're doing something similar with this poster too, just throwing more, you know, coincidences with Konami in there. And even though they keep saying that they're not affiliated with Konami and they don't understand why people are, you know, affiliated with them with Konami. So at this point, I'm with you. I have no idea what to think about this story. I mentioned on the show before that I really thought in my heart of hearts it was not Konami at all or a Metal Gear thing. And maybe they're just doing this on purpose. I don't know. But definitely after seeing what's gone on this week, I am much more in the camp now where I'm starting to believe the conspiracy theorists a little bit on this one. Like, there's something to this, whether they're doing it on purpose. Again, if it's Metal Gear, like even though Kojima is probably not going to be involved because of, you know, everything that happened between him and Konami, like I don't think they're going to bring him back for that. There might be like whoever Kojima's successor is, like whoever is going to be taking over Metal Gear wants to, you know, tease a new game in the Metal Gear series, for example, or whoever is taking over Silent Hill at this point, and kind of teasing it in the Kojima style because it's worked so well in the past for Konami. Like it worked really well with Metal Gear Solid 5. It worked well with when Silent Hills was announced, even though that game never came out. Like everyone on the internet was talking about it, and it was kind of, you know, the story of the day when it happened. So yeah, I feel like there's something up with this, and I'm definitely much more in the conspiracy theorist camp. Like I think the over under now for whether or not this is actually Konami is definitely over 60%. I think it's Konami now, because I thought before. It was the flip side where I thought it was 60% it was the indie developer and then 40% it was Konami. I think I flipped those after seeing all this stuff this week. But Matt, what's your over under on this? How likely do you think this is actually Konami?
I'm in, dude. I don't think the way that this continues to spiral out of control, both in terms of where fans are at, how, you know, the founder is playing around with this, I think that it's just given the scope of what the supposed team is and the size of everything, I really have to believe that there is something much more going on here. So I'm kind of squarely in this is Konami, Kojima. This isn't, at least this is not what it appears to be. Especially there's a lot of heavy rumors with another State of Play around that time. So like if that is true and all of this kind of lines up, then I don't know, Ryan. I think that I think there's something afoot here, whether it's Silent Hill or Metal Gear or whatever, Kojima or not. I'm not sure where I land on there, but I definitely don't think that this is just a simple story of an indie developer who may have gotten expectations out of hand, similarly to what we saw with No Man's Sky. I really think that there is something going on here. There are too many coincidences that are starting to line up. But I guess we're just a couple short weeks away from learning exactly what this is or isn't. So I guess we'll find out soon. But man, I just want an answer at this point. I just want to know what's happening.
Well, in like 13 days, we're going to have our answer, Matt. And I'm excited.
Yep.
I'm excited. But we got to go. But before we go, Matt, plugs go.
Yeah, so again, we're coming up on our 100th episode over at Burnout Brighter, so come find us on youtube.com/burnoutbrighter, or you can find us over on Twitter as well at twitter.com/burnout_Matt. Again, massive giveaway, a bunch of special gifts. Come over, sign up, and get ready. We're going to have a party, and yeah, let's have some fun.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/YumiKapri, as well as on podcast services around the globe. So for Matt Sawinski, I am Ryan Turford. This has been episode 11 of the PlayStation Drive, and we're out.